Welcome to Oregon Indie Film, a video podcast that shines the light on Oregon's independent film industry. I'm your host, Dawn Sellers. I interview Oregon's independent filmmakers who offer insights into the creative process, challenges, and triumphs of making movies in Oregon. This episode features Kristen Elizabeth, the author of the memoir She Evolved, a true Hollywood story of artistry, survival, and reinvention. A film intimacy professional, acting coach, and dance instructor based in the Pacific Northwest, Kristen has spent over 3 decades working in the entertainment industry as an actor, acting coach and intimacy coordinator, consultant, and choreographer for film and television. Her students have gone on to book lead roles on Netflix, Hulu, Apple TV, major motion pictures, and Broadway. I do want to take a moment to just mention that this conversation does cover issues such as sexual assault and rape. And so just be aware of that and that this episode may not be for everyone. But I do hope that you enjoy this conversation with Kristen Elizabeth. Welcome. It's so nice to meet you in person. I've been following you online and I hear your name around the film circuit in town. So yeah, it's great to finally meet in person. And we're here really to talk about your book, but also about what you do in the film industry. So this podcast kind of focuses on Oregon independent film and all of the people that it takes to make film locally. And you're a big part of that. So I would just start out maybe asking if you could tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay. My name is Kristen Elizabeth, and I am a film intimacy expert, also a film intimacy professional. I started out as the child of a professional film critic who became an actor, who walked away from my career in 1997 because I was not safe on sets. I was being sexually assaulted on every set that I stepped foot on. And so I left, and I thought I would never return except for maybe, trying to find some acting in local places and places that eventually I would find to be safe. But what ended up happening is I went to university here in Oregon and got my film studies degree. And at the end of that, when I was researching for my paper, my thesis, I should say, my senior thesis paper that I was writing, I was doing a paper on women behind the camera and the statistical data of the ridiculousness of not allowing women in these really important positions that we're certainly qualified for, capable of doing. And I discovered that the public thought that when they see sex scenes on screen, that the actors were actually engaged in sex. They couldn't differentiate pornography from acting. Mm-hmm. And that blew my mind because as an actor, I've known all along that that's not what we do.
Right.
And I never considered that the public thought otherwise.
Yeah.
So I started teaching people online about how sex scenes are actually filmed because I had done them as an actress. And so that became a thing for a few years. And then in 2018, one of my online students for that sent me an article about intimacy coordination. And now suddenly everything that I had been teaching for 4 years online had a title.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a position that people were doing on set. And I thought, well, I'm perfect for this. So I reached out to Ida O'Brien in the UK, who started it. And because I'm in America and on the West Coast, she sent me to somebody here in America to mentor me. And I became the first intimacy coordinator for film in the entire Pacific Northwest.
Wow. And what year was that?
That was at the end of 2018.
Yeah. Surprising that it was, not that long ago. I mean, obviously it's been, something needed for many, many years. I mean, I grew up watching soap operas, so I kind of knew that, sex on screen wasn't real. But that is surprising that people aren't aware of that in the general public.
Even to this day, I have people
Yeah.
come up to me and ask me, so how do they get it up and stay that way? Isn't
Yeah.
it like hard to do in front of all those people? And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like, what makes you think that's what's happening?
Different industry. That's the porn industry. Yeah.
Exactly. And we
Yeah.
we don't do that.
Yeah.
So as an educator, I mean, I've been a performer my entire life, but I've also paired that with being an educator. I've always been an educator, and
Mhm.
most of my life I've been an educator of performance art. So it was a perfect fit for me.
Mhm.
And I went into it with that perspective of now I have this opportunity with my life experience to start teaching people how this should be done.
Mhm.
And very soon very shortly after my pairing with this intimacy coordination community in the United States, I turned around and walked away from them completely, and I was essentially blacklisted from them.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is because they could not talk about trauma. And they didn't want to address the traumas that are the reason why we need intimacy coordination.
Right.
They couldn't talk about bodily functions very well. They couldn't talk about sexual, um, just educationally, like if you're approaching it
Right.
very clinically, they
Yeah.
were not capable at that time of having these conversations. And so when I was talking to them and bringing things up from my life experience in front of the camera, they were shocked and they shut me down. And I was like, oof, these are not the people to teach this.
Right. How did they want to approach it then if they didn't want to talk about those things? Because that's a big part of it.
It's a huge part of it, and it
Yeah.
is not being taught, and it hasn't been. So,
Yeah.
all of these certified intimacy coordinators that have taken these accredited courses have had zero training in the
The real world.
the real world.
Yeah.
They've had zero training in how to recognize when trauma is happening in front of their face, and they'd have zero training in how to stop it.
Yeah.
So, what they focused on is consent and boundaries. And I can
Mhm.
tell
Mhm.
instantly if I'm speaking to someone who has taken their courses because there's a very specific language that is used.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with teaching consent and boundaries. In fact, it's essential.
Right.
But you cannot teach consent and boundaries without teaching trauma and harm reduction.
Mhm.
And that's what's missing. And so as a result, we've had, what's this, 8 years now? It's 2026. So that's 8 years from
Mhm.
2018.
Yeah.
So 8 years of training intimacy coordinators globally. And in those 8 years, I've had so many of their students seek me out and come to me and ask me for help because they spend thousands and thousands of dollars for these training programs.
Mhm.
And they come away from it and they go, I don't even know what an intimacy coordinator does. All I know is consent and boundary talk.
Right. Yeah, I think that explains a lot of the misinformation or confusion that I hear. Um, just what is an intimacy coordinator and what do they do? So maybe we could just take a moment and talk about that.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, I know it's a way bigger subject than we can cover in an interview, but if you could just talk briefly about kind of the main points of what an intimacy coordinator should look like on set. And do you do stage and film, or do you
I
kind of
focus I focus on film.
film?
I
Okay.
do have a background in theater, so I certainly could do theater, but I choose to do film.
Yeah. So
Um,
as we talk about this, we'll talk about film
yes,
intimacy
film
coordinators
specific.
because
Yeah,
they would be a little different, but yeah.
absolutely. The main difference is in theater, you get rehearsal time,
Yeah.
lots of it, which makes a huge difference. And
Yeah.
so, as a film intimacy coordinator, I require rehearsal time. I make
Yes.
sure that we build it, even if it's 15 or 20 minutes, that matters.
Hmm.
Um, so, what does an intimacy coordinator do? First and foremost, an intimacy coordinator is there to advocate for the performers and to ensure that the performers are being treated safely in this environment where they have to be hyperexposed, meaning nude
Hmm.
to some level, um, and or performing any form of simulated physical intimacy. So that is a big ball of, I don't know what that means, because most people think that just means sex scenes, and it
Right.
doesn't. Think about a pregnant woman giving birth, and
Yeah.
there's a doctor with his hands down to
Hmm.
catch the baby. Or think about um, a dementia patient who's, maybe the nurse is giving them a bath. Um, any kind of medical thing. Think about a child who's being picked up and hugged and held by an adult.
Hmm.
All of those are physical forms of intimacy. So the intimacy coordinator is there to protect talent in a way that we have conversations about how are we going to touch each other? Where do we put hands? How do we ensure that the story is being told, but the actor is feeling safe and supported?
Hmm.
Most importantly, the intimacy coordinator is there, in my opinion, for harm reduction. And that's the part that I emphasize that has been completely missed in the last 8 years of this. And I need to say there are really good intimacy coordinators out there who know
Yeah,
better and
of
who
course.
took those
Yeah.
training programs and are doing it right,
Hmm.
because they have their own life experience and they realize,
Right.
okay, I need to do this. But they suffered through training programs that were not very good.
Yeah.
So when we think of choreographing a dance,
Hmm.
every single movement is planned, right? When we think of blocking a scene, that's just kind of stand here and move from point A to point B. We don't really choreograph the way an actor moves very specifically like you do dance.
Right.
But when it comes to physical intimacy where we're touching each other, that has to change. We have to go in and choreograph it, every single moment of it, very specifically. What this does is it takes away the element of surprise, which some actors boff at and they go, oh, no, 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 we need spontaneity, we need surprise.
Right.
Well,
Hmm.
we can still have that in your performance. But when I know for a fact that you're only going to put your hand on my shoulder and you're not going to try something else in the midst of us performing our scene, then I can relax and be my character and give you a better performance.
Hmm.
So there's this misconception that when we choreograph everything, that there's no longer performance or spontaneity within performance. And that's not true. What we're doing is we're building spaces that make it so that it's safe and consensual
Hmm.
performance. And you can really go places bigger and bolder when you feel that sense of safety and you're not thinking, wait, I don't know what's happening.
Right.
So many directors look at actors and they say, well, you know what to do.
Yeah.
That's not fair to the actors,
Mm-mm. No,
because then you end up,
it's almost like working on developing a trust, right? That the actors are not going to, setting the boundaries and developing that trust in rehearsal, so that when you get to the time to be spontaneous and emotional, you don't stifle that, but you
right.
also know kind of where to work within it. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And then the other thing that has happened historically in filmmaking is that there's this power imbalance that makes it so that a director thinks that it's okay to be on set with a cast and crew and at the very last minute, without any warning, just say something ridiculous like, you know what? I think we need to do an orgy scene right here. This
Yeah.
would make it better. So let's just do that today. And then you have a cast that's freaking out internally and thinking,
Right.
I don't want to do this, but I've already committed to the project and I've already,
Right.
got paydays coming. And what do I do? Well, do I walk away? Am I going to get sued if I walk away? So
Right.
there's these issues that we also tend as intimacy coordinators to handle,
Hmm.
in that if a director wants something changed at the last minute, we then become the advocate and the go-between, and we
Hmm.
work it out so that the cast is not being asked to do something at the last minute that they weren't prepared to do.
Right.
And so we're kind of outside of that power dynamic.
Hmm.
Now, this is a big issue because Especially if you look at bigger Hollywood productions, it's an even bigger issue. But it's
Hmm.
it's also a very big issue in indie productions because producers and directors are at the top of the food chain, and rightfully so. They have this air of I'm in charge.
Right.
And with all due respect to that position, when I come on set, I am going to make sure that your project is going the way that you want it to go. And I'm there to ensure that the story continues and that we tell the story you want to tell. But as intimacy coordinator, if I see you pulling one of those power moves, I'm
Hmm.
going to shut you down and put you in your place
Hmm.
and pivot and re-navigate it so that everybody is safe and comfortable.
I imagine that takes a lot of prep time too. So, when do you typically get involved in pre-production before you ever get on set?
If I have my way, I am brought in during pre-production before a table read, even.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'm brought in before it's even fully cast.
Yeah.
Um, Other times I'm brought in the night before the scene is shot and I have no prep time.
Hmm.
So it's important to be a well-trained intimacy coordinator that can handle all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
because you just never know.
No, it is. And you never really know what trauma you're going to be dealing with either. So, every person, every human has different experiences and different trauma that they deal with. And so, um, yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of communication
Yes.
and
And what you
making
said
it
is
comfortable for communication.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's really my specialty is because I can talk about anything and
Yeah.
it doesn't embarrass me and I don't give shame to anyone when we're having conversations.
Hmm.
That's that's a trick. That's a hard thing to achieve as a person to be able to actually be able to talk about anything and not be offended or freaked out by it.
Hmm.
And one of the problems that I have is that so many people who sign up to be intimacy coordinators are, for instance, sex therapists. But the sex therapist is trying to achieve something in that line of work that we're trying to squash in our line of
Right.
work.
Exactly.
So it's a totally different mindset.
Hmm.
And yet we do have to be sexperts. I need
Yeah.
to know everything about the sex that's being told in the storyline.
Right.
Um, that requires a lot of knowledge. And I know most intimacy coordinators just don't have that knowledge. They don't have the expertise in body positioning. So being a movement director is essential.
Hmm.
Having a background in some dance or choreography,
Hmm. Hmm.
so important.
Hmm.
You can certainly do the job without it, but it's much more difficult.
Yeah, I
So,
imagine there's a lot of, for people, and I'm sure people will be listening and watching this who are interested in becoming intimacy coordinators.
mhm.
Um, so maybe talk a little bit about what. Who makes a good intimacy coordinator? What kind of a background? So obviously the experience in movement and dance is important, but what other things are good to have?
you There's a laundry list,
Yeah.
honestly. And I know that a lot of it can be learned as you're training,
Hmm.
but I think that there's an essential element of understanding actors and how actors are trained
Hmm.
because we need to know the different styles of acting so that when an actor tells me, "Oh, well, I'm Meisner." Okay, now I know how to talk to you on set. Now
Right.
I know how to get through to you. I think movement direction, of course,
Hmm.
so essential. It's totally acceptable to have some kind of a background in sex therapy or psychology is really good. Those
Hmm.
things are great. But if you have that as your background and you have zero experience with filmmaking, that's going to create a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
The training programs that are accredited by the unions have zero filmmaking education in their programs.
Mm.
My program that I created, and I'll explain, there's a story behind that too. I created my program out of all of these people that were taking the other programs coming to me and complaining and saying, I'm not learning, I don't know what to do. I really just want to do this job. I want to do it right. And I don't know what to do. So I ended up creating a training program, and it's the first and only nonprofit for film intimacy education.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I did that is because one of the first questions I would ask those people when they came to me, and they'd say, I'm level 1 trained, or I'm approaching level 3. And I would say, okay, great. What is the intimacy coordinator's job at the table read? And most of them would say, and I'm not kidding, Dawn, this is crazy. 90% of them would go, what's a table read?
Oh my. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
an issue.
so background in film, or at least knowledge of how a film set works or how a film pre-production works. I mean, that's important too,
Yes.
not just set etiquette, but pre-production and how the film comes together.
Yes, 100%. It's so important. And it's okay to come to this if you have zero, experience or background in it, as long as you get that training. You
Yeah,
have to have that training so that you understand what is your position? How do you speak to everybody else on set?
right,
What happens if you came into this as an intimacy coordinator, you didn't have a background in acting or filmmaking, and suddenly you're hired for a position where now you're going to be working with some A-list actors? How do you approach them? How do you
right,
talk to them?
right.
Well, the accredited training programs, their answer to that is you don't. Hands
Oh,
off, never approach, never talk. And I'm like, okay. Um, as an actress who has been sexually assaulted by A-list actors on set, I have a problem with that.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not okay.
again, it's the communication. You need that open communication with everyone.
Yes.
I would imagine also skills in negotiation would be important, like how to
Yes.
negotiate, you know, what
Yeah,
everyone needs. Uh,
absolutely. Conflict resolution.
yeah.
I include that. I also think it's important to understand nonviolent communication skills.
Hmm.
So that's part of the conflict resolution.
Hmm.
Now, some of the things that are required by the unions are things like mental health first aid,
Hmm.
sexual harassment bystander training,
Hmm.
diversity, equity, and inclusion
Hmm.
training.
Hmm.
These are all wonderful things. These are all
Hmm.
things that should be there.
Yeah.
But I think they missed the mark in the idea that it's okay to have all of that and not have filmmaking as part of your background.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense, really. I can see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have classes, and those are probably available on your website. People could learn about those.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about your book because I think that's such an important part of what you do and kind of how you where you're coming from.
Yes.
And I didn't make it all the way through because I just got it the other day. But yeah, I want you to tell us about that if you're ready to do that. And just share, we want people to read the book. So don't give away any secrets, but what you can tell us about your book and kind of why you decided to write the book, all of those things.
So I had to write the book to prove myself, which is ridiculous. But I had to write the book to say, here is my life, and this proves that I'm an expert in this field.
Hmm.
Um, I did not take classes from anybody else. I have never trained with anybody else, technically. What I had in the beginning when I first paired up with the intimacy coordinators that were the creators of this was a few phone calls and a few emails. And that was about it. They didn't have a training program back then. They were just trying to figure out how to put it together.
Right.
And I did a couple of workshops with them that they offered for theater because they didn't have a film program yet.
Hmm.
And those workshops were consent training only. They didn't
Right.
include anything else.
Right.
So this book is me stepping up and saying, I am claiming my space in this industry that has blacklisted me because I am a survivor of this abuse that is rampant in this industry.
Hmm.
It is not okay to retaliate against survivors. So in the book, what I did is I tell my story chronologically throughout from the time I first started performing as I started the book with me starting as a go-go dancer because that
Hmm.
was at the same time that I was starting to do modeling and doing auditions for modeling, acting, and dancing in Hollywood. And so every chapter is a portion of the story chronologically, and then at the end of the chapter is what I learned from that experience. And then there's an additional page or a page and a half of notes, which is the educator in me coming out, where there's a film intimacy lesson, there's actor's notes, and there's director's notes. So I set it up as a precursor to what is going to be the textbook that I am writing on film
Hmm.
intimacy for filmmakers.
Hmm. Hmm. What year does it start in your life then? When did you begin dancing?
January of 1992.
Oh, okay, so it picks up in the early 90s then.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I wanna finish it because yeah, it's you've
Mhm.
definitely got me hooked on this story. Um, so yeah, what else do you want to share about your work or your book? What's next for you with this book? I mean, I know you're going to write your textbook, but what's your hope for this book?
My hope for this book is that it wakes people up
Hmm.
because I know that my story is not unique. That's part of the reason
Right.
why it's important that I tell the story, because what I'm telling in this book is not unique, but it's all the secrets that are hidden and not spoken about.
Right.
Um, when you've worked on a set, I guarantee that you have experienced some level of something that I explain in my book.
Hmm.
You've witnessed some form of derogatory comment from somebody on set to somebody else, or you've seen somebody be very uncomfortable because of a level of nudity that they're required to use in a scene, or you've seen power dynamics where there's coercion and manipulation.
Hmm.
And most of the time in this industry, what happens is we witness all of that and we normalize it.
Right.
So nobody says anything.
Right. And I don't think that's exclusive to film. I think
Right.
that's across the board for everyone. I mean, and not just women. I think men deal with it too. So,
Absolutely.
um,
Yes.
yeah, super important conversation. Yeah.
Yes. And by normalizing these behaviors and by just bearing witness to them without stepping forward, saying something, or doing something about it,
Hmm.
we have created this monster. And this monster is a society that allows this rampant level of abuse. I am not a pearl clutcher. Like when I get on set, I'm joking, I'm having fun. We can have sexual innuendo jokes. There's no
Right.
reason not to.
Right.
But we cannot target our jokes to a specific person, to an individual, or to a specific group of people. It has to be done in such a way that it's not going to feel like um, somebody's being abused or being bullied. I have no
Hmm.
tolerance for that.
Hmm.
But it's important to note that I'm also incredibly sex positive and I love having fun on set. And I think it's
Right.
awesome when we can joke around about stuff and we can
Hmm.
giggle. I want that environment.
Hmm.
So part of this is me telling it like it is and telling the details. In this book, I go there. I tell
Hmm.
the details that nobody else says. Most of the time, you read somebody's story and they say, well, I was sexually abused on this set or I was sexually harassed on this set. And my neurodivergent brain goes, I want details. What does that mean? Did you have an accidental boob graze or were you raped?
Right. Because there's
We
all
have
different
these
levels. Hmm.
totally different levels,
Yeah.
and they're all forms of abuse, harassment, assault, whatever. But
Yeah.
but there's different levels and different responses.
Hey there. If you're enjoying this episode of Oregon Indie Film, don't go anywhere. We've got more great conversation coming up. And if you believe in uplifting local voices and the power of independent storytelling, we'd love your support. Hit that follow button, share the show with a friend, or leave us a quick 5-star review. It makes a big difference. Want to get more involved? Reach out at OregonIndieFilm@gmail.com. Now, back to the episode.
So it's important for all of us to be aware of what's happening, to start to understand it so that we can change the culture that we're working in.
Yeah.
This is not just for indie filmmaking and it's not just for Hollywood, it's
Right.
across the board.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, one of the reasons I created this nonprofit was because, and my nonprofit, by the way, is filmintimacy.org.
Oh, okay, great.
So, so super simple,
Yeah.
um, is because we have more people, and I'm guessing here, but I'm probably right, that we have more people working in indie than we do working in the big productions. And yet, nobody working in indie can afford this training as it
Right.
is set up.
Yeah.
To become an intimacy coordinator costs over $10,000 if you go through an
Hmm.
accredited training program. Do you know what an intimacy coordinator gets paid if they are working a SAG-AFTRA contract?
Mm-mm.
1,200 a day, 4,000 a
Hmm.
week.
Hmm. Yeah, an indie filmmaker isn't going to be able to afford that.
No. And even in Hollywood, even those that I know that have paid the $10,000 plus and are working in Hollywood and making that level of pay, it
Hmm.
took them months, if not years, before they got enough work to pay that
Hmm.
back and then feel like they were had a profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's set up for failure.
It is, and I'm sure you've given that a lot of thought and how that can move forward. Do you want to share, where you see it going in the industry, how you see the intimacy coordinator role moving forward?
I know that up until very recently, it has been the wild, wild west, even with the people that are certified and all of the people that are accredited. It has been really crazy out there because they didn't standardize things and they
Hmm.
didn't make sure that people weren't working who shouldn't have been. Um, so inside the union, there are a couple of different committees. I'm very involved in SAG-AFTRA, not because I like SAG-AFTRA, not because I am working as an actor, but specifically for this reason, so
Hmm.
that I can get a new voice in there to say, y'all need to fix this because you have a problem that you don't even realize how big this problem is.
Hmm.
Well, some people have been realizing how big the problem is, and so they've been working to fix it and they're working to kind of solve this,
Hmm.
but they're not there yet. They're absolutely not there yet. They still don't want the fix because what happens when you get the real fix for this is the A-list actors don't get their way anymore. They don't get to say, no, I'm not having an intimacy coordinator. I'm not talking to an intimacy coordinator.
Hmm.
And the unions are going to always side with the A-list actors because that's how they make the most money.
Hmm.
So my goal in this is to attack this from a different angle. And my
Right.
goal in this is not to just train intimacy coordinators. What my goal is, because they've been gatekeeping all of this information that they have, they don't want anybody else to have it because then they don't have a position. Well, I don't really care about the position. I care about
Right.
people being safe on set.
Right.
So my goal is to train filmmakers. I don't know or care what hat you wear on set. You
Mhm.
all need this information.
Yes, I agree. It's the awareness of it. It's
Yes.
really the across the board awareness of safety.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. So behind the scenes, I have been working very closely with higher ups in SAG-AFTRA who do have an interest in what I'm saying and what I'm sharing. I have sent my book to president of SAG-AFTRA, Sean Astin, has my book. He and
Mhm.
I have been working together behind the scenes to try to see if there's a way that we can maybe address these problems in a different way.
Mhm.
One of the members of the Stunt and Safety Committee, I think he might even be the co-chair, I can't remember. He has my book. Um, Several other committee members. It's being passed around right now, but right now we're in the midst of our contract talks with the AMPTP. So
Right.
we,
Hmm. Yeah.
there's a lot of
A lot
problems,
going
a
on. Yeah.
lot going on. My little book in my little corner of this world
Right.
is small beans to them at the moment.
Right.
But it
Um,
really isn't small beans.
It really isn't. And I think, kind of pulling it back to local and what people can do. So as people are listening or watching this conversation, how are some ways that we can handle this locally if you see something or if you experience something? Maybe if you could just give a little bit of advice
Yeah.
to people out there, like what's the best way to go about handling that without being, nobody wants to be that person, right? That difficult person, that person that gets on social media and blasts everybody. You don't want to be that person. So what's a good way to handle it kindly, I guess, so that you get kindness in return?
Right. That's a great way to put it. I like that. Well, first and foremost, what I would recommend to local filmmakers is if you have any form of intimate content in your script and you cannot afford an intimacy coordinator, come to me for a consultation and I'll give you a walkthrough of these are the things you need to be aware of and here's how you handle them properly.
Mhm.
And that's much more affordable for a production. And then by doing that, I'm teaching. I'm constantly teaching. So the more people that get these consultations, if they can't afford to have the actual intimacy coordinator, the more people will start to understand what to look for.
Mhm.
If you are on a set and something is happening in front of you, if you see an actor, for instance, who's being asked to do something in the last minute without prep time, the script changes, or actors who are being handsy,
Mhm.
maybe not when the camera's rolling, but
Mhm.
behind the scenes, you're playing my spouse, so it's okay for me to grab your ass as you walk away.
Right.
No, it's not.
No.
So if you see that, you say, hey, I saw what you did, not on my set.
Hmm.
And honestly, you don't have to be nicer than that.
Yeah.
Not on my set.
Yeah.
Well, you're not the director, you're not the producer. I don't care. If I'm on set, it's my set.
Right.
And if you're on set, it's your set. And every person on set has the right to say, not on my set. We're
Yeah.
not doing that. We're going to be better than that.
Yeah.
If you show up to work on a film, and I know that this is a local problem, I've heard it from too many people.
Hmm.
You show up to find somebody to partner with. Instead of going on Tinder, you decided, oh, the film community is a great place to hook up.
Oh, right. Oh, my.
You're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Filmmaking, even if you have a zero budget, filmmaking should be a professional environment and it should be treated as such.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 And we all want that for our independent film community, our local film community. We want to lift it up, not
Yes.
not tear it down by
Yes.
being unprofessional or, there's lots of words for that, but I'll just leave it at unprofessional.
Yes. And you know what? Like I said before, it doesn't mean you can't joke around and have fun.
Right.
I have fun on every set that I'm on. I
Yeah.
make sure that we have fun because sometimes this shit is hard.
It is hard and you have to make it fun, but not at the expense of someone else.
Exactly.
Not at the I don't know. It's very difficult because I know people take things differently. People have different experiences. Like I said before, we all have different backgrounds and
Right.
ways that we deal or don't deal with things. And I
Yes.
think, it can be very difficult. And for me, I'm older. And so I've seen a lot, I've been through a lot. And so when I see a young woman being treated in a way that is not respectful, I'm totally comfortable with stepping up and saying, hey, not on my set.
Yeah.
But, someone else who's younger or who maybe doesn't feel like they can do that, I would say find somebody that you can talk to on set.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully film sets can kind of set those guidelines up before you ever start. Like, hey, if you have a problem, here's who you go to.
Yeah. I will say I have worked with a lot of local indie filmmakers, and there are some people in our local area who are absolutely doing it right.
Yeah.
They have learned, they're young filmmakers, but they have
Yeah.
learned
Right.
and they are stepping up and they're saying, we're not going to take this anymore. We want
Yeah.
to be artists making art. And this is a
Right.
collaborative art.
Yeah.
And in order for it to continue, we cannot have trauma sets. We cannot be traumatizing the people that are involved.
No.
Um, and I'm like you, I'm in my mid 50s.
Yeah.
You don't get to tear me down.
Right.
It's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah.
I've been through a lot. Read my book.
Yeah.
I've been through some shit.
Exactly. By the time you get to be our age, you've been through some shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for the younger people who are on
Yeah.
set, here's the thing. You're going to make mistakes. We all
Right.
make mistakes. We
Yes.
can't be afraid of making mistakes.
Yes.
One of the mistakes that we make sometimes as younger people is that we'll accuse somebody of something without seeing the whole picture,
Right.
which makes it a level of false accusation.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people come forward and they say, well, so and so, you guys should blacklist so and so because he
Right.
did this, this, and this, or she did this, this, and
Right.
this.
Mm-hmm.
And they go public with that.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to that if there's receipts. We need receipts. We need the corroboration. We need the evidence.
Yeah.
But if it's just a he said, she said, that's difficult. But when you have multiple people coming forward and
Yeah.
saying the same thing about,
The
whoever
same
that
person.
is,
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
now we have some receipts. Now we
Yeah.
have some backup.
Yeah.
One of the problems that we have in the local is with the local community in Oregon is that some people have stepped forward with very legitimate complaints and they had receipts
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't feel safe and now I don't want to work this anymore. But this was
Mm-hmm.
my dream my whole life. I have studied,
Right.
I have worked to educate myself, I have skills, but I don't feel safe stepping on set
Yeah.
because nobody had my back and I had the receipts.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
No. No, and I think, what can we do as, people who are, like I said before, trying to lift up the community, when these things happen? I mean, it's awareness, right? So
Yes.
we just have to talk about it. We have to talk about it.
And when you have multiple people complaining about one person, stop offering that one person the jobs.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Yeah.
They don't need it. I mean, we have this all the way up to A-listers in Hollywood. I'm sure you heard about what happened here during the auditions for The Postman.
Yes.
Yeah, that was publicly, that was handled.
Right.
I know the story.
We know it wasn't. Yeah.
It was not handled.
No.
You want to know how I know it wasn't handled? Where's the police report?
Right. Right.
When somebody goes to that level, where's the fucking police report?
Yeah. And I think that's an important point with accusations. I mean, it's easy to accuse someone of something, but, a police report is part of the receipts. And I know that it can be difficult. I know as a woman, it can be very difficult to, file that police report, make that call.
Yes.
And there are many reasons women don't do that.
Yep.
But I think awareness, again, there has to be, it's so important to talk about it, to report it when it happens to the authorities so that it doesn't just become a he said, she said, or a they said,
Right. And it's not a female issue. It's a human issue.
It is. Absolutely. Yeah.
We are in a society where women perpetrate just as much, believe it or not, especially in film. There are women who, I'm going to tell you one story from my book, just to give you an example.
Yeah.
You would think that a woman who menstruates has the back of another woman who menstruates. That did not happen to me on the set of Showgirls. I don't know if you got to that chapter yet.
No, I haven't.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to give you a very, very quick example. Yeah. I was in a scene, we were filming a scene in Showgirls where I was sitting in a chair right behind Elizabeth Berkley, the lead actress. And so we were filming this for, a good chunk of time. And I was wearing the tiniest little bikini, like this much material, an inch of material. And it was my own outfit. It was not something that costume provided. So there was no second copy of it. And as I'm sitting there during this scene, I unexpectedly got my period. And I didn't know I was going to get my period that day. So I went to our AD, who was a woman. And I said, hey, I just got my period. I need 5 minutes. And she said, no. I was like, wait, what? I just got my period. Let me run to the bathroom. I'll be right back. She said, no, we don't have time for that. Sit down.
Oh, my.
She made me sit back in that chair for 20 minutes. Anyone who menstruates knows that 20 minutes go by, you're bleeding for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You're actively bleeding.
Yeah.
The degree to which you're bleeding can vary depending on many things, right? But you're actively bleeding. And I have this much material between my legs. And 20 minutes later, she said, okay. And she walks over to me. She goes, all right, you can go now. And I stood up. And what do you think the chair looked like?
Right.
Looked like a murder scene.
It was a mess that someone needed to clean up.
You said it, because I was so angry. I looked at her and I said, I need to go clean myself and my costume. You get that. You can clean the chair. I was so angry. I couldn't even be embarrassed.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. It doesn't matter what gender you are. You don't treat people that way.
Right.
Period. Yeah. You just don't treat people that way. And if everybody on set starts to think about not only how am I treating everybody else on set, but what am I witnessing?
Exactly.
Because if I'm witnessing it and not saying anything, then I'm part of the problem.
Right.
When I was abused on set, and I describe this in detail in my book, one of the worst things wasn't the person that was abusing me. It was all of the people watching it happen.
Yeah.
Who didn't have my back. They never stopped it. To them, it was just another day. They were so used to it. So you're right. Communication is the key. Not being afraid to talk about things like menstruation or whatever it is.
Or whatever,
Yeah. Not thinking that women are the only victims.
Yeah.
And that women can't be perpetrators.
Yeah.
Because they absolutely can be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have to broaden our perspective, and we have to bring humanity back to this art.
I think that's the key. That's the word that's been running through my mind is humanity. We have to have humanity. And just because it's the film industry, and I know there's money involved, and that always makes things a little more difficult, but it's the humanity. It's being kind to one another and communicating your needs and asking what other people's needs are.
Yeah. It's really unfair. And this is not new, so I'm speaking to the history of filmmaking.
Yeah.
It's really unfair that we as artists have been expected to give, just to try to become a part of this art.
Yeah.
So if you have a zero budget film that you're making, whether it's a 5-page short or a 50-page or whatever it is, you need to treat everybody that's volunteered as volunteers, and you need to respect that.
Yeah.
And you can't just say, oh no, you can't leave. We have to get this done.
Right.
We have to come together and find a way to have mutual respect. Okay, I respect that you've scheduled this time for this scene. So as a volunteer, I'm going to do my best to be here, show up, do my job, and take it seriously. But when you're asking me to do a 16-hour day for free, that's affecting my health.
Yeah.
I didn't sign up to have my health be affected in that negative way, right?
Right. Yeah.
So everybody needs to be aware of this. And we can't keep telling artists that they have to work for free to do their art.
No. And I hope that we're in a place where that's starting to shift in film and independent film. But there are always going to be people who expect people to make their film. It always gets me, like, yeah, come and, create this project that I'm passionate about so that I can make money and forward my career, but I'm not giving you anything.
Right.
It just, that's disrespectful. It really is.
It really is. It's
you
so
know
self-serving.
yeah.
And how can you have a collaborative art that's only serving those selfish people?
Well, I think the end product shows.
It
I
does.
think projects that are fun and collaborative and where people are kind and respectful of one another, I think that comes across in the film.
It does.
I really believe that, especially at the indie level where you're not paying people and you're working together. And, you see these films that just are like, what happened here? Well, maybe that set wasn't fun. Maybe, it comes
Yeah,
across in the final project. I
it
really
does.
believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. The other point to this is that we can't be performative about it.
Yeah.
There's so much performative behavior on sets. And then this is in other industries too, but we're talking about film here. So on film sets, there's so much performative behavior. Like, for instance, a male director will hire a female crew so that they look good on
Right.
paper, but then they
Exactly.
treat the female crew
Yep.
like crap while they're
Yep.
filming the product.
Yep. Yep.
I don't allow for that when I'm on set.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons that it doesn't happen when I'm on set is because people know I have a reputation now, and my reputation hopefully is good, but
Mhm.
it's also, don't mess with her because she will put you in your place.
Right.
And I put that out there. I put that energy out there right from the get-go. When somebody's interviewing me, I let them know, you're hiring me and I am being hired to protect and to promote and to create this product with you.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to take shit while I do it. And I'm
Right.
not going to let you give anybody else shit while we're doing it either.
Right. Yeah.
I, you asked me earlier how I envision the future of intimacy coordination.
Hmm.
Honestly, if I had my way, we wouldn't be needed because everybody
Yeah.
would know better.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I would like to see is that we don't need intimacy coordinators, that we need intimacy choreographers,
Yeah.
and that
That's
you
a good
have
way to
that.
put it. I like that.
And the intimacy choreography is a very specialized part of intimacy coordination,
Hmm.
but the vast majority of intimacy coordinators don't have enough knowledge or background to be the real choreographers of this.
Right.
So I would like it to be that our protocols become the norm so that we don't need to be the babysitter on set. I don't want to come to set and babysit.
No.
That's not what I want. I'm
No.
willing to right now
Right.
because we're in this midst of this change, hopefully.
Hmm.
But that's not what I want to do with my life. I want to choreograph. I want to make this scene look
Right.
amazing. I
Right.
want to go there and I want to see the final product and be able to recognize that's my work.
Hmm. And it's
I put
better
that.
because there was a choreographer there.
Yes.
Like, yeah, sure, you can film a sex scene and it's, and maybe everybody was fine and, they communicated and it went well, but was it choreographed? Was it the
Right.
best that it could be?
Most of the time it's not.
No.
One of the things that blows my mind, I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but to me, it's just so mind-blowing. I'm a Shakespearean trained actor. And I get to set and we get to the sex scene parts and I'll ask my actors, okay, what do you imagine for your vocalizations here? And I cannot believe 80 to 90% of the time the actors look at me and they go, vocalizations? What? What do you mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, now that's another layer of what I
Right.
have to do on set. I have to be an acting coach. I have to be a vocal coach.
Yeah.
So to make the choreography come together, I have to teach them this is how you breathe during sex. This is how you
Yeah.
moan. This is how you groan. This is how you orgasm vocally. And they go, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah. Well, as a writer, so when I was learning to write for film, um, what writers are told is, oh, and it's fight scenes and sex scenes, same thing. We're told the same thing. Don't write the details. Just say, oh, they have sex, or oh, they're in bed and they're having sex, and
Yeah.
then let the director figure it out.
Yeah, well, that doesn't happen. So let me
No.
go through this process because I gave a
Yeah.
talk to the International Screenwriters Association, and
Mhm.
I told them that's not okay. You can't keep teaching people to do this because
No.
here's what happens. And I give this example in my training programs. I have a script from a popular television show on HBO, and I give them a scene, and in the scene it says they have sex, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. They have
Yeah.
sex again. And
Yeah.
that's all that's said.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what happens when that's all that's said in text. The director's too embarrassed to discuss it. So the
Hmm.
director goes, well, in this scene, we're going to do doggy style. You know what to do.
Oh my. Yeah.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
all that's said.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, maybe in our personal lives, we've had experiences with doggy style sex,
Right.
but my personal life has no bearing on my character or my
Right.
experience on this production.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what if I've never done that position?
Yeah.
What if I've never had heterosexual sex? What if
Right.
I've never had homosexual sex, but my character is asked to do that?
Yeah. It is. It's
So,
all part of character development,
yes,
and it's choreographed. Again, that's, it needs to be choreographed so that it can be the best that it is. Just
yes,
like you wouldn't write, a scene where if you're at a dance and, oh, they do the waltz, and then move on. Like that has to be choreographed. Someone has to work with those actors. They have to be trained. They have to, know where to put their feet. It's the
yeah,
same thing. It really needs to
yes,
be seen as the same thing.
exactly. It
Yeah.
does. It has to be seen as the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And with that choreography element, by and large, what ends up happening is directors' eyes are opened to the possibilities that they can then
Yes.
achieve.
Yes.
I have never worked with a director that said that I inhibited their art in any way. Every
Hmm.
director that I've physically worked with on set has come back and said, wow, not only did you make it better, you made it happen faster and safer. I
Hmm.
saved time
Yeah.
because of doing it this way.
Absolutely.
And time is
Yeah.
money, as we all know.
Yeah.
So when we know what to expect, we're not worried about surprises, and we're trained to do our scene properly,
Yeah.
we can create amazing scenes. Did you know that there are 7 different ways to kiss on camera?
I didn't realize that. I mean, if I thought about it, I probably could.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Most of the time when I get to a kissing scene, I ask the director, how do you want them to kiss? And the
Yeah.
director's like, what do you mean?
Yeah. What do you
What,
mean?
what do you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there are 7 different ways to kiss. How are we doing this?
Yeah.
Here's a great example. My daughter's a rock star, and she was filming a music video where her character in her music video she was playing 2 characters. So this character and this character had to kiss, but they're both played by my daughter. So for that kissing scene, we brought in her sister, my other daughter, to sit with her
Hmm.
to have the wig on and you could see the back of the head. And we get to that part where she's supposed to kiss herself basically. And my daughters are going, Mom, we're not going to kiss each other. And I said, no, 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 you're not going to kiss each other. I know how to
Right.
do this.
Right.
I'm going to choreograph this so that your lips
Right.
aren't going to be
Your
anywhere
lips,
near each
they're not
other's lips.
even going to touch. Yeah.
Yeah. But most of the time, people don't realize that's an option.
Right.
So it's important for an intimacy professional to know how to work with the DP, to
Yeah.
understand camera angles,
Yeah.
to understand what camera angles mean, because each angle has meaning in the narration of the story.
Hmm.
I mean, there's so much to it. It's when I get interviewed like this, and when you ask me questions, my brain just goes.
I
And
know. There's a
there's
lot.
do
Yeah.
it. But at the same time, it's not like this isn't teachable. It is. I'm living
Right.
proof that I can take all of these different aspects of it and break it down into points that you can learn so that when you do get on set, you realize this doesn't have to be difficult and it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be awkward because,
Right.
it is awkward for most people.
It is.
So, it doesn't have to be. It can be beautiful and it can be good for the story, good for the camera, good for, all of it.
Yeah.
So,
The
yeah.
most awkward thing about filming sex scenes isn't the sexual content.
No.
the most awkward thing about filming a sex scene is the position you have to put your
Yeah.
body in and hold it
Yeah.
during the filming so that you're getting it right for camera.
Right.
How is it okay for us to be graduating intimacy coordinators and certifying and accrediting them from these $10,000 programs
Right.
when they don't even understand the term for camera?
Right. Yeah, that's so
Make
disappointing
sense.
to learn that. I mean, I think, we're kind of running out of time, but it's such a big conversation and there's so much we could talk about. I wouldn't mind doing maybe another episode at some point where we kind of break it down and talk about maybe some of the more specific things, maybe for the director, for the actor, something like that. So we could talk about that if you'd be up for that. But tell
Sure.
us where people can find you. So if they want to continue the conversation with you, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who will want to, where can we find you?
So first of all, my website for my book and for my personal stuff is shevolved, SHEVOLVED.com. And from that website, you can get to the Film Intimacy page. And at the bottom of that page is a link to filmintimacy.org, which is my nonprofit for teaching film intimacy. At the end of this month, on the 28th, I will be doing a reading and book signing at the Rose City Book Pub.
Oh, I love that place. It's one of my favorite little book pubs in town. Yeah.
It is. It's
Great.
A cute little spot.
Yeah.
And so that's on Saturday the 28th at 5:30, from 5:30 to 7, I think.
Oh, nice.
We'll be doing that. Yeah.
Nice. And you're on Instagram, LinkedIn.
As she evolved. I'm on Instagram,
Yeah.
sometimes on Threads. I am not active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, I have an account there, but I'm not active. I'm not on Facebook.
Okay.
Personally, I despise social media.
Yeah.
I just think it has done so much more damage than good at this point. So I try to stay off of it, but absolutely you can DM me from Insta or Threads.
Yeah.
But the best way is just to email me directly, Kristen@shevolved.com.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, everyone get the book, read the book, show up to the book signing. That sounds like great fun. I might be there too. And best of luck to you.
Thank you.
And I hope we get to work together.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you so much. It's been such a long time that we've heard about each other, but we haven't actually connected.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Dawn. I appreciate this very much.
Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to follow Kristen Elizabeth on her website or social media. You'll find those links in the show notes, along with information about her book launch party on March 28th at Rose City Book Pub. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a 5-star review and share it on your social media. It helps us connect with more indie film lovers. Would you like to support the podcast by becoming a guest or a sponsor? Reach out at OregonIndieFilm@gmail.com.